So welcome everyone. Today, my name is Shayna Jacques. I am the Outreach Manager for PSF Circle of Care. So we have today a interesting webinar. It's going to talk about prepare your document for emergency. And we have Britt and Neil. So if you have any question, I just want you to add your question in the Q&A box of the chat. And at the end of the presentation, we're all going to go over some questions. And I'm going to turn it over Pam to quickly do a small presentation, introduction.
Thank you, Shayna. Welcome everybody this afternoon. We're so glad to have you here. We know this is a very important topic and hope that you get something out of it today. I have no doubt with our two panelists you will. Shayna, will you bring up our beautiful coming of age slide? So I'm Pam Ramsden, manager of Coming of Age, and our motto is that we inspire people to live with passion and purpose. Next slide. And how do we do that? We do it through a workshop series, our signature series called Explore Your Future. It's a 4-part workshop series where you are looking at what your strengths are, your talents, your interests, and how you can turn those into a goal to give you more purpose at this stage of life. We're here for people 50 and over. We have Capturing the Energy training for nonprofits where we help them learn how to use volunteers of a certain age with a little more integrity rather than having us stuffing envelopes. We have a lot to offer. We have many events. We used to have them all in person. We're doing webinars now. We have 2 websites, comingofage.org, which is our national website, and Coming of Age NYC for the local New York City area. We also have 2 newsletters. We have a national newsletter that goes out to about 4,300 people across the country with inspiring stories of how people are living purposefully, and our theme is really all about positive aging. So one more comment that I want to make before we get into the program today, and that is how important it is to register for the census. If you've not done it already, what's going to happen is there are going to be door knockers. People are going to come around and ask you the census questions at your residence. If you do not want that, you simply can go online. You still have time until the end of September to register at 2020census.gov. It's very simple. You can do it in 10 minutes. So that's all about the census. Let me tell you a little bit about our presenters today. We're really pleased to have Britt Berner and Neil Hitz. Britt has generously shared her wisdom on several PSS webinars that people have found exceedingly helpful, and she's going to do more of an overview today. She's an attorney at Berner Law Group, a boutique law firm handling all matters of elder law, estate planning, trust and estate administration, and special needs planning. She recently completed a 3-year term as chair of the New York City Bar Association Committee on the Legal Problems of the Aging. She serves as treasurer of the Elder Law and Special Needs Planning section of the New York State Bar Association. Britt also serves as a member of the Advisory Council of the Katz Institute for Women's Health at Northwell. She lives both in West Hampton and downtown Brooklyn. Neil hails from Michigan and is an elder with a business and management career. After retiring several years ago, he joined the Executive Service Corps in Detroit, where he consulted with nonprofits in strategic planning. He's also worked with the Small Business Administration as a mentor to entrepreneurs. Based on personal experience, he created My Life Directory as his mission to assist people in times of emotional stress and as an emergency preparedness tool. Without further ado, I give you Britt Berner. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sorry for moving the camera around. I'm trying to get that weird yellow light out. I've somewhat gotten it. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm very happy to be here and to not only share this panel discussion with Neil, but also to have learned about My Life Directory, which we'll get to after I give a little overview of the legal side of things. So as an elder law estate planning attorney, I help people plan for the times in their life where they're not around to control things on their own. So when I'm talking to people, I'm talking about control. And the best way that you can control the future is by planning with some flexibility. And that's really what we try to do for people. And the planning that we do is planning for both a time when somebody is incapacitated, if that should happen, and also planning for after death. And the way we do that as lawyers is by setting up legal structure that will achieve the goals that somebody is looking to achieve. So when we talk about the documents that we create with people as attorneys, right off the bat, we talk about something called advance directives. So it's exactly what it sounds like. It is a directive that you are signing in advance of needing it. Why? Because when you need it, you most often can't sign it at that time. These documents are considered medical in nature, even though many times, even though you don't have to sign them with a lawyer, many times they are signed with a lawyer. Now, I know we have people listening today who are not necessarily only in New York State. So a lot of what I'm talking about is New York State specific. However, I'm going to talk about it as generally as I can, but none of this is construed to be direct legal advice because you will have to speak with an attorney in your local state and jurisdiction and about your certain circumstances. Right off the bat, I'll talk about a healthcare proxy and a living will. A healthcare proxy is what we call the document in New York State where you are naming who will make medical decisions for you if you are unable to make them for yourself. Now, in other states, I know they call it a medical power of attorney, and there are various other terms that have been used. But again, we use the term healthcare proxy here in New York. And this document is saying who is going to make those decisions for you. Now, in New York, you have to actually be deemed incapacitated in order for that person to be able to step forth and have those powers. That person, it is one person at a time. You can name multiple people in succession. However, it has to be one agent at a time. On that document, we usually put the address and telephone numbers for the person you're naming as agent and their successor or multiple successors. You can say that that person has the power to choose whether or not you would take artificial nutrition or hydration if you are at a point where that decision has to be made. It can have a duration, so it could be a healthcare proxy that lasts for 6 months or one that lasts indefinitely. It can talk about whether or not you'd like to be an organ donor. And this all goes right on the document. Like I said, you do not need a lawyer to sign these documents. In fact, in New York State, you just need 2 witnesses over the age of 18 who are not named in the document to serve as your witnesses. Personally, the first time I signed a healthcare proxy, I was being wheeled into an operation to have my appendix taken out. And I became very aware of the fact that I hadn't signed these documents. And I wanted to make sure that if I was under anesthesia and a decision had to be made, that they were calling the person that I wanted them to call. Now, we won't get into it today, but different states have defaults about who they would call, and the default might not be the person that you would choose. And I wanted to be very clear about who would be spoken to, because there are certain people in my life who know what I would want in that situation if I could speak for myself. And those are the people I wanted to empower to be in charge. And so a healthcare proxy is choosing who. Now, the living will talks about whether or not you would want certain types of artificial nutrition, hydration, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, extraordinary measures, if you're in an irreversible state, no hope of recovery. So you're not naming a person on this document, you're more naming what your wishes are so that you can guide that person that is making decisions for you because you can't speak for yourself. Same thing with signing it to witnesses over the age of 18 that are not your healthcare agents. Often we have people sign what we call Hipaa release forms. This is your privacy over your medical information, and you can sign a release stating that certain people have the right to speak to your doctor and get medical information, to contact the lab and get your lab reports from your blood tests. Whatever it may be, you have privacy rights over that medical information, and you can sign a form allowing for someone else to have access to that information. Because remember, the healthcare agent, while they can get that information when serving as agent, if you still have mental capacity, that healthcare agent is not empowered. So you might want to give them other powers to get information even when you're not deemed incapacitated. The last advance directive I want to refer to is what we in New York call a disposition of remains form. And this is a form that many funeral homes are very happy for people to get, funeral directors, because on this form you can state if you've pre-planned your funeral. There are people who pre-plan and have a contract for their funeral arrangements, and they prepay for their funeral as well. And this would say where you have done so. And it can also, very importantly, if you would like to be cremated, it's a good idea to have these documents where you have signed in front of two witnesses that you would like to be cremated, so that there's no question when it comes time that that was your wish. So those are the documents that I refer to as advance directives. The next really important document, which almost falls in that category but is a little different, is a power of attorney. Now in New York, that is, when we say power of attorney, that is financial. But in your state that has a medical and a financial power of attorney, I'm specifically talking about the financial in this instance. Now, I won't get into the signing requirements of the document because that's going to vary from state to state, but this document is really important because it's going to say who has the ability to access bank accounts, to sign documents on your behalf, to speak with the insurance companies, all of the, I call it the business of your life. The business of your life can be handled through the power of attorney agent. And that agent has a duty to act in your best interest and to follow your wishes as stated to the extent that they have them. So the power of attorney document is going to be really important because if you get to a point where you either physically can't go to the bank, physically can't do these business items, or mentally become unable to do so, you want to have someone in place who can act on your behalf, because if you don't have someone who can sign your checks for you, then how are you going to pay your bills? If you don't have somebody who's going to be able to apply for government benefits for you, how are you going to apply for that home care that you might need? These are all different things that may come up, and you're going to need somebody who can handle it for you if you can't handle it for yourself. And so the power of attorney document is going to be very important. If you don't have that, you could end up in a situation where the court has to come and be involved, and you'll need a guardian or a conservator. Again, depending on what state you're in, it's going to be called something a little different. But you really don't want to be in a situation where, because of lack of planning, you end up in a court where the court has to assign somebody to do these things for you. It's much more expensive and it's much more invasive. We try to avoid that where we can. Again, it's all about having control to the extent that you can when you hit a point in your life where you may have a little less control because of an inability, either physical or cognitive disability. Then beyond the healthcare documents and the power of attorney, we talk about planning for people with last will and testament or a type of trust. Now, I'm not going to get deep into that because we could be on here for another 2 hours and we'll never get to hear what Neil has to say about my life directory. But just to be a short overview, a will is a document that says where your assets will go at the time of your death. A trust will also say where those assets go at the time of your death. The difference is that a trust is a living entity that owns things while you're alive. So your trust becomes the owner of your bank account, the owner of your home. whatever it is that you decide to put into that trust, there's actually a change in ownership. And so you want to go see a lawyer and figure out what is the best plan for you. Now, again, this is going to vary quite a bit from state to state and certainly from situation to situation. But the important thing to know is that trusts aren't just for the super rich. I have people all the time who say, well, I thought trusts were for the Rockefellers. Well, not just for the Rockefellers. There are trusts that are for tax planning. There's trusts that are for planning for getting Medicaid at home in certain states. There are trusts for those who have disabilities. There are trusts for avoiding probate because of maybe a long probate process because of the state you live in or because of family members that you're worried are going to come in and contest. So there's all different types of trusts and they fit all different types of circumstances. That being said, not everybody needs a trust, but certainly it's important to find out what's going to be best for you. So beyond putting the plan together, so right, step one is you go to the lawyer, you have these conversations, you find out what are the things I need to know. I need to know who I want to give to. I want to know who I need to empower. I need to figure out, do I want to trust? Do I want to will? And you piece through what's going to be best. The next step is determining who those people are going to be. Now, you can do that on your own and name the people, and that's the end of it. But what I would recommend is that you figure out who you want to empower as your power of attorney or as your healthcare agent or as your trustee. And then you talk to that person and you tell them what you want them to do. This, to me, is as important as what's written down on the paper. Now, it's not more important than what's written down on the paper because you can't have conflicting things. You can't say on the paper, I give everything to person A, and then tell the executor of your will to really give it to person B. You can't conflict yourself. But you might want to let them know what you would want, especially the people that you're empowering while you're still alive. So, for example, if you're naming someone to serve as your healthcare agent to make healthcare decisions for you, if you're unable to make them for yourself, you might want to run through some scenarios. When something comes up that you see a friend or something on the television about a case where, you know, oh, I saw in the news that there was a woman and she had a certain illness and they had to decide if they were going to give her dialysis or antibiotics or whatever it is. Talk that through with the agent you're naming under the healthcare documents so that they know your thoughts and your wishes and which way you would lean in one of those situations. It's very important that they know what to do so that they're doing what you would do to the best of their ability. Certainly with finances as well. You know, let them know what's important to you. If I get to a point where I can't handle my own finances, it's very important to me that I stay at home. It's very important that if I stay at home, that I have care in the home, or that maybe that, you know, please make sure that I get a manicure every week. It's very important to me how I look. I've had people actually write these things in their trust because they want to give the people they're naming the power to say, I know that I'm doing what she would want because she told me that. So you want the documents, you want these conversations because you want to make sure that what you want is what happens. Then the next thing I would get into is talking about the storage of the documents. So what do you do with these things? What do you do with the healthcare proxy, with the power of attorney, all of that? Now, a lot of these documents, you're going to want the originals to be well known where they are because they're going to be necessary. The original of a trust, the original of a last will and testament, the original power of attorney. These are things that are likely going to have to be presented as used, and a copy might not suffice. Now, in New York State, certainly, and I believe in other states as well, healthcare proxy, a copy is just as good as an original. So if you sign a healthcare proxy saying, I name person A as my agent and person B to be successor, well, then you can take those documents and you can make 20 copies and you can give it to your doctors. And when you go to the hospital for a surgery, you can give them a copy at the hospital. Again, important to remain consistent. So what does that mean in this context? It means that if you're going to be giving these documents out so that it's well known who you're naming as agent, you also want to know where you gave those documents out so that if you decide to change who that person is, you can backtrack and give the copy of the new document, because you don't want that old document flying around if something happens and you don't want that person anymore. You want to be very clear that you're naming someone new. But you do want to give this to your doctors, your primary care physicians, so they know who they can be speaking to, especially in terms of that HIPAA release that might give somebody the power to speak on your behalf to the doctor, even when you still have your capacity. Then I think the greatest thing that I saw, so when Pam approached me and asked me to speak, she said, you know, that she told me about Neil and about my life directory. And I said, well, I'd like to go online. I want to see what this is, because if we're going to speak together, I should take a look at it. And I think that what his document, his product does, which he's going to talk to you about, I don't want to call it a product, but this directory does, is it really helps you on that storage aspect. It helps you with the organizing, with determining what the conversations are going to be, and then how to put this all in one place so that it's very easy for the people that you're naming, because you may not be naming the same person in all these instances. And when it comes to actual physical storage, I tell people that I don't like safe deposit boxes. When someone passes away, a safe deposit box is going to get frozen. And even if there's a joint owner, it is often still frozen. And so I generally tell clients that these important documents should be kept in a fire-safe box in their homes. And if they do that and they tell their agents, even if you don't want to say, I'm leaving all my money to this person or to that person, or what you want to do, you can at least say, I've named you as the executor of my will, and my will is kept in the fire safe box in my closet in my bedroom, and you can always go there and get it if there's an emergency. Same with the other documents. And that way it's very clear where the documents are, and they're safe without being so safe that nobody can get them when they really need them. You also don't want a situation where you need the healthcare proxy or you need the power of attorney and it's a bank holiday. You know, you want to make sure that these documents are accessible at all times to the people that you're naming, because the whole point is to make things easier on them so that they can take care of you if that becomes necessary. So with that, now that we've gone through some of the important legal documents, I'm going to hand it over to Neil, and then we'll come back for questions at the end. Thanks, everyone.
Hello there, I hope you can hear me. Great. I'm really honored to be a part of this webinar. I'm a business person, I'm not a professional, so I hope you aren't expecting a TED Talk. I do have a tendency to look down at my notes every once in a while just to make sure I don't forget anything. You know, Britt did an excellent job explaining several important legal documents, and now it's my turn to explain where do you go, how do you know where everything is? My Life Directory is a 48-page booklet or a fillable PDF designed to guide you to enter just the information of the location of all the documents and files that you use to manage your life and that of your family. You're also encouraged to enter the contact information for professional people, as well as business and personal friends. And this again would be a good place to enter those names and contact information for the people you have engaged with your legal documents. Why is the directory important? Because, you know, we don't like to consider it, but major illness, accidents and strokes, dementia, and other issues come along at any time. When someone else must take over, even for a short time, they will need to know the location of this information. The reality is that everyone has a story about a situation they faced when they had to take over for a relative or a parent. Many people have personal experiences. I know myself, I've had to take over several times for individuals. No one likes to think they're vulnerable. No one likes to consider a time when they're not in charge, but it does happen, and frankly, it will happen. My Life Directory is not only about death, but about all types of emergencies. And you know, as a matter of fact, it's tougher to take over when it's even for a short period of time. Because if you don't know how long the situation will last, what charges are being deducted every month? Are there personal commitments? What are the monthly expenses to take care of? If the resident is in the hospital, how does the security system work? What are the day-to-day operations? Where are the house keys or the lock combinations? You know, you're probably organized and you're thinking, I'm pretty much on top of everything. All the things that Britt mentioned, I've got those all put aside, plus insurance documents. Well, in My Life Directory, there are 16 categories and over 100 topics to prompt you to make sure you know where everything is, and then log in the information. Categories like health, finance, legal, residence, insurance, charities, internet, possessions, and day-to-day living. I don't know about you, but I'm approaching my eighth decade, and I experience times when I forget things. Items I don't need to refer to very often, I forget sort of where I put them. It's frustrating, but usually after a time I find them because I sort of remember where they were. Things like keys or storage units or military records or ID numbers or prescriptions and when they expire. Just imagine someone having to take over, even temporarily, at what could be an emotional and stressful time, and having to search for a list of close friends and business and professional associates, particularly your name and phone number of your attorney, plus many other important items. Do you really want to have someone you love and care for experience all that? And what if that person is arriving from out of town? You know, I've been through these situations with my parents and other relatives. Did it work out? Yes, eventually. But it took a lot of time, and it wasn't fun. And it really took me away from the important issues I was facing while taking over. So how did My Life Directory get started? When my wife and I were in our 40s, raising 2 sons, she and I had occasion to travel for business together. So we created a list of just a location of all the important items and documents and contacts in the event someone had to take over, even temporarily. Then about 7 years ago, friends would start telling us stories about when they had to take over and the situations and how stressful it was. So I told them about the notebook and the list that my wife and I put together years ago. You know, they loved the idea and they encouraged me to create something similar to guide people. So I drafted a document, had some copies printed, held some focus groups, sent out copies across the US to get feedback. You know, and then I put it on the shelf. In 2019, I looked in the mirror and decided I was really getting old. And if I was going to do this, I really should get to it. So spring of last year, I launched mylifedirectory.com, the website where you can find information on My Life Directory. It offers a directory and guides you how to enter the location and the brief pertinent information you'll need. It is available as a fillable PDF, which means that you download it to your computer, fill in the information, and then store it in your favorite cloud. If you need to make changes, you can go back and alter it at any time. You can print copies for yourself of all the pages or just some of the pages. The directory is super easy to use, inexpensive, and very confidential. Since the launch last year, over 800 people have ordered My Life Directory, some from as far away as Australia and Great Britain. That tells me that there's a need and that the directory fills the need in an easy, simple, inexpensive fashion. You're probably asking yourself or wondering, well, why just put in the location? Well, it makes it super simple to complete. There are large, thick, expensive books you can buy where you write in all the details, the beneficiaries and charities and all that information. To me, that's a duplication. It duplicates the documents you've already created. It's so much easier to just create a list of where they all are. Then if you want to change something or add a new document or a different document, the location stays in My Life directory and you don't have to change anything. Other symptoms that are promoted advocate putting everything in one place. Well, to me, some documents and files you refer to monthly, others once a year, sometimes only in an emergency. Like, where's the jewelry store and the historic photos? Not with the tax returns or the spare keys. So why try to create a box or a file where you put everything? It just doesn't work. Just all you have to do is remember the location. There's something else important. My Life directory, the cover of the booklet, does not have my picture on it, does not have my name on it. I don't consider myself the author. This is as much of a service as it is a product. I'm really just a coordinator. This is definitely a mission for me. Several of the 100+ topics and information have come back to me with thank you letters and suggestions that goes back into each copy every time we print more. For example, there's pages of legal definitions. And also there's a page on values, a blank page to fill in what's important in your life. Okay, who should get a directory? Well, just about anyone with a family, but particularly if you're over the age of 60. At that point in life, it's time to try to get organized. People will find that they don't know where things are because they even haven't created it or they haven't looked for it in a long time. So they need to find it, put the location in the directory. That's the first audience. Another group are the professionals, attorneys, insurance agents, financial planners, CPAs, realtors. They're buying the directory, putting their name on the cover, and giving it to clients to help them get organized. Next are religious groups and not-for-profits that are branding the directory and offering it for a donation. Alzheimer's of Michigan has put copies in their family library. Another really important audience is what I call the sandwich generation. These are people living between raising children and aging parents. They would like to gently encourage mom and dad to get organized. Well, My Life directory does that in a diplomatic way. The flip side is the elders that have purchased copies have come back to me to buy more copies to give to their mid-career children because they should start a directory for themselves. Now, I know we've covered a lot in a short amount of time, and so we're going to have a couple visuals on the screen where you can see some of what the directory looks like in real life. That's good for the cover. There should be another one coming up here. These are categories. You can see health, financial, legal, real estate, insurance, accounting, charities. There's a variety of categories to stir your memory and give you ideas. There's topics, over 100 topics, list of meds, pharmacy and prescription, pensions, deeds, mortgages, guardians, home equity loans, long-term care. These are all designed, and here's more, charities, passports, storage units, maintenance, where's the address book, certificates of birth, military, adoption, and marriage, clubs and close friends, phone codes, special needs. Again, to get you thinking, creating the documents, or if you have them, entering just the location. Here's a sample of a page of pensions where you fill in the information. This is under pensions, under finance. Put down the location of an agreement, any loans, the last 7 years, where are the tax returns, name and address of my broker, my bank account, Where's my IRA, my 401, or my 529? These are all things that you want someone to have the location of. Next. And the deed to the house. This is under realty. Deed to the house. Is it a warranty deed? How about the home improvements, in case I need to list those when claiming capital gains? How about maintenance? Who maintains the house or condo? How to get in touch with those people? And where are the locks? There's also the definition page of legal, as was suggested to me. This is not legal definitions, not strict ones that Britt would have, but ideas so you have a working knowledge of an advocate or conservator or custodian or what a deed is. Next. And lastly, the cover. You know, I hope I've encouraged you to consider this entire topic and to create a system to find the documents and files and records and contacts, and then record the location. If you decide on My Life Directory, that's great. If you have questions, please go to mylifedirectory.com. mylifedirectory.com and get the information you need. And this is another important point. You know, you're doing this for your spouse and your family and the people that care for you. This is really a positive legacy you can leave. Thanks for your time and your interest. Now I'm going to turn this back to Pam.
Thank you so much, Britt and Neil. This is such important information for us to have, and I hope it prompts you to start thinking, and not only thinking, but doing something, making these things happen for the good of you, your peace of mind, and your family. And we're very pleased to announce that we have entered into an agreement with Neil to be able to offer to you the PDF version of the My Life Directory. I'm going to send the link to you in an email. You'll be able to go to our site, and for a modest donation, we will send that to you and you'll be ready to begin. So we have now time for questions, and I'll turn it over to Shaina to offer some of the questions she has noted that have come in from our listeners.
Okay, and I know, Britt, you're comfortable with the Q&A. Some of the questions are regarding your presentation. The first question, Dr. Rita, if you see it on the Q&A, I think she was asking about the estate.
Yes, so the question is, are family members responsible for deaths after the loved one has died? The estate, what if they don't have an estate? So what I'll say, and this is definitely in New York State, and I would say likely in other states as well, but you just want to check, is that you are not responsible for the debts of another person, except for to the extent that they've left assets behind. So for example, if somebody dies with no money and nothing in their name, you know, they were living off of their Social Security and now that's gone because they passed, well then in that instance, you don't inherit their debts. However, if you inherit $100,000 and there are debts that can be paid, then you do have to pay that through the estate. And there are certain assets that are exempt from that and certain assets that aren't. So you'll just want to check with the lawyer at that time.
Okay.
I think the next one I can take too. What are low cost or free ways to establish a will or trust in New York City with an estate lawyer for someone on fixed income or low income, such as seniors? So I'll give a very New York City specific answer, and then I'll also kind of give a broader answer. So in New York City, I would call the New York City Bar Association. They actually have a program specifically for this purpose. There's also NILAG, New York Legal Assistance Group, that has a program as well. There's another program called VOLS, V-O-L-S, Volunteer Legal Services. And I think the last one I'll say in New York City is if you're on the Upper East Side or it's a liberal Upper East Side as a terminology. The Lenox Hill Neighborhood House, I know, has provided some legal assistance in terms of powers of attorney and wills for people. I don't know that they're going to do trusts at these places, but certainly a will, power of attorney, and healthcare proxy. Outside of New York City, I would say that there are likely legal services for those individuals who are low income. And you should contact your local county bar association in whatever state and county that you're in. And that local county bar association should be able to give you a list of those programs, because it's going to differ based on from place to place.
And Alisa asks, so I will give the directory to my executive, and who else? Who other?
Well,
So
I got that. The question is, should I give the directory to my executors and who else?
yes.
It really depends, and My Life Directory is very versatile, because you may have people come in and need to substitute or take over for a short amount of time. That wouldn't necessarily be the executors. That would be friends or relatives, and you should tell them where the directory is. The other thing is, some people are a little sensitive to leaving financial information in the same place that they might leave information about where the keys are stored. So the beauty of the directory is you can remove pages from the printed version, or you can print only certain pages off the PDF and give those to certain people. Other pages you can print and give to other people. But definitely the person who's the executor should have access to or know the location of the directory. My concern is you would give it to a variety of people depending upon who's going to be coming in, particularly in an emergency on a short-term basis. I see another question. Is it better to have everything in one place? I have a studio apartment and basement with storage. I have a safe deposit box in the basement and the key upstairs in my apartment. Well, it sounds to me you've already decided not to have everything in one place. And as I mentioned, some of the larger items you may not want to put in a safe deposit box in the basement. That might be for important legal documents or jewelry. Then other documents that you might refer to, like records on your charge account, you might refer to that every month. You want to have that in a file box or a file cabinet near your desk. So really, I think it's better than trying to put everything in one place, is to decide where you like to have it, where you're going to remember it is, and then putting the location in the directory. So you know you've got one document that tells you where everything is.
I had just asked a question of Britt here. You had mentioned the fire safe box, Britt. What would you recommend should go into that particular box?
I would say that all of the documents that, just because it's fire safe, right? So anything that you don't want to lose. So certainly military discharge papers, birth certificate, important death certificates for those that you've lost, your will, your trust, your power of attorney, all those legal documents. The question that Neil just answered about the safe deposit box, when I refer to safe deposit box and I say don't have one, I'm referring specifically, and I should have been clear, to a safe deposit box in a bank. So if you have some sort of safe at home, as long as someone else, like you said, the person who asked the question said the key was in the apartment and the safe was downstairs, that's fine, as long as someone knows that's what that key is to, right? I mean, my own father, actually, he's got like these keys on a ring, and there's 100 of them, and I don't even know what they go to. So, I should probably go over there when I leave here and tell him that he should tell me what those keys are for. But, you want to make sure that it's okay that you have the key separate from the box, but that someone knows where that key is. But yeah, all those important papers that you could lose in a fire, because that's the purpose of it, should be in there.
Let me add two things to that real quick. I've just found out the hard way that during COVID, my bank branch is closed and I have no access to the safety deposit box. I had to call the local bank president, who then arranged for an appointment, some people came over. Now that's great, as long as you don't need a document within 2 days. The other thing, and again, if you have a basement storage box, it can be fireproof, but make sure it may not be flood proof. And if you're in your basement and there's a sewer backup, it doesn't work. So I'm not saying you should move things, but decide which things you need duplicates of. Thank you.
Brent, can you add your information on the chat? So some attendees are asking for your information, your phone number. So you can add it on.
Can I share my screen for that one?
Oh, yes. That would be the best, yes.
I'll share my screen and I'll have my contact information. Just
no problem.
A minute. But as we continue to answer questions, I can keep going. You can see that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's perfect.
Okay,
go ahead.
Yeah, I see the next question's about a consultation. So, you know, I would say that for those who have, I would normally say who saw us in person at a seminar, but although we're not in person, obviously, but this counts, we waive our initial consultation fee. So if somebody's interested, I'm only licensed in New York State, so it would only apply for those in New York, but I'm happy to waive the consultation fee.
Okay, so Zamora asks, I have 2 children and I have been considering naming both of them with my advanced directives. Is that okay?
So in terms of, it depends which document you're referring to. It may depend on state. So I'll tell you New York, and then you should check if you're not in New York. The healthcare proxy in New York, you have to pick one at a time. So you would have to choose one of your children and then a second as successor. Of course, you can tell them that you fully intend for them to make decisions together, but you do have to name one. And I think that that's just a practical determination, because if you name 2 and they have the same power and one disagrees with the other, then who does the doctor listen to? And so I think that's the goal there. In terms of a power of attorney, you can name 2. And again, in New York, you can say that they have to act together or that they may act separately in an either or capacity. So it just depends. And then this didn't ask about advanced directives, but on a will, you could also name 2 people to act as executor, and on a trust.
Britt, would you say something about whether the power of attorney should reside in the same state? Sometimes that may not be possible.
Yeah, so if all other things are equal and you have one family member local and one far away, I would say pick the person who's close. But in general, when it comes to choosing your agents for different things, I would say that there are a lot of factors. Proximity is one. Another is going to be how aligned they are with you on your different thoughts and beliefs and goals and values. Another, obviously the most important is trust, who you trust the most. And I would say the least important thing that is often thought of by many as the most important thing is who's the oldest. So many people say to me, well, how could we not pick him, or how could we not pick her? She's the oldest. And to me, you know, again, all things being equal, that's fine. You can choose the oldest, but otherwise, you know, you want someone who's decisive. You want someone who's going to spring into action. You want someone who's going to do what you would do if you could do it for yourself. You really want to be looking at those things before you look at, you know, age.
So I'm going to allow Annette Kurt to say something. She raised her hand. Annette, if you can unmute yourself, you'll be able to speak.
Hello.
Hi. You had a feedback.
I have been trying for 45 minutes to get on. I'm on my phone. Which advanced directives are state specific? Do I need to have different directives for my children who live in 3 different states and none lives in New York?
So the state that you want to have the directives from is the state that you live in. So if you live in New York and you've got a child in South Carolina, a child in California, and one in Alaska, you could name the three of them in succession as your three agents, but you're going to want a New York State healthcare proxy or a New York State power of attorney because you are a resident of New York State or whatever state you're a resident of.
Okay, we're just gonna quickly go to the chat and see if we can answer some of the questions there. Okay, Bella Cohen, she asks, can I get an outline for a will? Not sure. Can she get an outline for a will?
I don't know what the outline would look like, but I think that, you know, I would recommend having an attorney draft your will, even if you have to, you know, there's perfectly good lawyers who do the programs that I was talking about to get your will done, but I would recommend having it done by a lawyer. And I would say in terms of outline, the most important thing is to know who you want to name as executor and how you want your assets to be distributed. But you really do need to sit down with a lawyer and talk it through to determine what your outline would look like and what your documents would look like.
I think some of her question you already answered, but the last part is, what can I do for a signature in this pandemic?
Oh, that's a really good question. I should have covered that. So again, state specific, but in New York State, Governor Cuomo has signed an executive order, and it was signed back one in March, one in April, and it has been subsequently signed every month since. So right now we're working off an executive order that extends the original one through September 4th. And we find out basically the night of September 4th or the night of September 3rd if he's going to extend it another month. So there's not a lot of advance. And what New York State has right now is in the ability to do video conferencing. So either a Zoom like this or FaceTime or some other live face-to-face electronically that allows me as the notary, the witness of a will, and the witness of these other documents to watch someone sign it. They have to certify to me that they are present in the state of New York at the time of signing it. They show me their identification like you would with any notary. And once they sign it, if they send me an electronic copy day of, I can notarize it and witness it. And then if they send me the originals within 30 days, I can notarize and sign those as of the date we had the video conference. So that has been really great. Honestly, clients who are not necessarily only staying home because of COVID, but those who were not motivated to get out of the house to get this stuff done prior to COVID really have the benefit right now of being able to do this from home. It's been really great for a lot of people. Similar to that, I see a question here, which of the documents mentioned need to be notarized? So again, that's going to be different probably state to state, but in New York, we would notarize your trust, we would notarize your power of attorney, and on a will, you need two witnesses, and then the witnesses' signatures are notarized because they swear that you were over 18, of sound mind, all of those things. So those are the documents that are notarized in New York. The others just require two witnesses.
Any other questions that we need to address?
I'm just looking through these questions here to see if there's any others.
Maybe the last question, Britt. Abigail, she asked, how can you find out if my state has provided this ability to get things notarized virtually? So how can they find out? Maybe they
I would
have
say
to
call the local bar association because you don't probably want to go through and read all those executive orders. I don't know if other states have as many as New York. I do know that there are other states that have the ability to electronically sign and notarize documents even when it's not COVID. So it really does vary state to state. And I know in New York, there is a movement that has some sort of electronic signing of documents going forward. Someone asked if there's a directory of elder law attorneys. And I think yes is the answer. The best place that I would say to go is a website NAELA.org, NAELA.org. It's National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. And you can actually put in your zip code and it will tell you who is a member of that group near you. And it's funny, you'll see even when people call my office asking for other states, some people just have their name and their phone number. Some people have a full description and a picture. Some people have their website. And so it's a great place to start to see who's near you and then figure out who might be an appropriate person for you to go to.
Pam,
Yes.
I think it's interesting to remind people that if they take you up on your offer for the PDF, in the categories and the topics, there's probably 20 legal items mentioned as thought starters. And people can look at those and say, oh, I need to get that document. They're both under the medical, residence, and legal categories.
Good, good. The other thing that is in the directory that I thought was very helpful, in the back, it's what to do when there's a death. And you categorize that immediately, next several days, within a week, within 1 to 2 weeks, and within 1 month. I thought that was quite helpful because most of us don't deal with that and need to know what we have to do. So it's very well thought out, and I'm appreciative of that. Did we answer the question from Zamoria about her brother in the nursing home?
I don't think I saw that one yet. I was just about to answer a different one, but if you want to ask that one, I can answer
Yes.
that.
I have a brother in a nursing home in Chicago, and I live in Philadelphia. He has a bank account, which I was recently added to in order to have access to in the event of his passing. Is there anything I should be aware of?
I'm just going to read it again myself. So I would say that is going to be a very state-specific answer. Anything that is Medicaid related, even though it's a federal program, it is also state funded and it is run by the counties actually. So I don't know, and this is actually similar to the other question I was just about to answer, talking about Medicaid, when someone's on Medicaid and the family having the debts of Medicaid after the fact. In New York State, Medicaid can only claw back and recover from what we call probate assets. So those are assets in your sole name with no beneficiary. So to this person's question, if you're joint on the bank account, that would not be a probate asset and Medicaid couldn't recover from it. Same with anything in a trust, same with anything that had a beneficiary listed on it. However, I don't know if that's the case in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania. So you would want to contact an elder law attorney in that state to find out the recovery rights of Pennsylvania Medicaid, because that will be state specific. Someone else was asking, I'm married with no children, and they assume that their spouse would just be making all of their decisions if they become incapacitated. And they were asking if it has to be legally done, if it's just the two of them, mortgage, deed, bank accounts. So what I'll say is that you should have these documents regardless of if you're married or not, because while it's going to, I think the best way to describe it is if it's a joint asset, you both have access to it. But there are certain assets that can't be joint, like a retirement account that's specific to an individual. Or if your spouse has to call your health insurance company to get coverage information for a recent doctor's visit because you're unable to, they're not able to legally, they're not authorized to speak on your behalf unless you authorize them. So just being a spouse is not going to give that authority. So if it is just you and your spouse, you should still have a power of attorney that will allow your spouse to contact certain institutions or insurance companies or whatever it may be to speak on your behalf. There are also some joint assets that if you want to manipulate them or maneuver them, you actually need the signature of both joint owners. So if your spouse owns it along with you, but you're now unable to sign, your spouse may have to sign both in their individual capacity and as your agent under power of attorney. So you're going to want to have those documents in place even in that scenario.
I think the question from Annette, it's a good question.
Yeah, if I go into the hospital out of New York State, will they recognize my advance directives from New York State? So they should is the answer. I say they should because maybe a week ago I would have said yes, but I had someone come in this week and say that their brother is in a New York facility and they have an out-of-state healthcare proxy and that the facility wasn't accepting it. Now, we didn't get deeper into it. This was an anecdotal story, and so I didn't deal with it on the legal realm. But I would say that if that was an issue, I would have pressed the legal department of that facility because yes, it should be followed. Also, the idea is that there is an intent, it's an intent issue too. If you've signed documents with the intent that a certain person can make decisions for you, the hospital is going to want to follow that because they want somebody to listen to and they want someone who knows you rather than just a panel of doctors making a decision. So the answer is yes, they should recognize your documents. That being said, I would always advise someone who is a true snowbird or splits their time in two places to exercise documents in both places, but make sure that they don't revoke the other. So, and I would also be consistent, like I said before, with who you're naming. So it might be that the form is recognized in each state, but I wouldn't start naming different people because you don't want conflicting documents.
I saw a question there about fireproof boxes. Someone wanting to know how long are they fireproof? Every cabinet that's sold as fireproof has what's called a burn rate in number of hours. Obviously, the least expensive ones have a burn rate maybe of 30 minutes. Other ones much longer. So don't just assume that every file cabinet is going to protect the documents for hours and hours.
A question about the download. I'm not sure, Neil. So the person is asking, they purchased the Life Directory on the website, but they have an issue downloading it. So what's the next step for them to do?
The website has an email address, which is MLD, My Life Directory, @att.net. And they can reach out on that if they have questions about either the PDF or the directory, and I'll pass the PDF ones along to Pam.
Okay. So what was the email again? I can type it in on the chat.
For My Life Directory, MLD9 @att.net.
And of course, if you order it through our PSS Give Lively page, where you can make a modest donation, if there's any difficulty in downloading, we will certainly work with you and make sure that you get that safely.
Okay. I think we went over all the questions.
I think
Good.
I'm seeing another one here that about someone asking about a resource to assist them in making decisions on the healthcare directives. I think there's a lot of different organizations that have different documents. One is Compassionate Choices that has a document, but also states have something called, some states have something called a MOLST, MOLST, or a POLST, a POLST. It's essentially the same document. They're physician's orders, or so PO when it's POLST, it's physician orders. When it's MOLST, it's medical orders. And that's actually something you go through with your doctor, and your doctor assists you and signs the document along with you as to if you want to be brought to the hospital, in what circumstances yes, in what circumstances no, who you want to name, what kind of medications you might want. That's something that's not done very far in advance, like some of these estate planning documents, but it's more something that's done as people get closer to end of life or have a specific diagnosis. And so you may want to look into that, because that may help you make some of the decisions about this. I think that might be it,
Yes.
if I can tell.
Yes, I think that was it.
Yeah, that was lively question and answer. That was great.
Well, we've had some lively speakers, and I thank you both again. I think you've given us an afternoon of empowerment, a way that we can take the next step, and I appreciate that so much. I wanted to let everyone know too that this is a recorded webinar. We put all of our webinars on the pssusa.org/resources page. I will also put that in my email to you when I send you the link to my live directory. You'll find this webinar probably within a week. There were a lot of good resources mentioned, and you may want to take advantage of listening to it again and picking up on those resources. After a period of time, the webinars on our website get moved over to a YouTube channel. But there is a link on the resources page that you can click on, and you can go back through all of the webinars that we've recorded for the past year. Actually, we were way ahead of the crisis. We were doing webinars before we had to do them. So we're in good shape with that. I just want to thank everyone who attended, and hope you learned something today. And all I can say is you better get those documents ready, up to date, and then organize, tell everybody where you're going to store those things. Thank you, Shaina, for a wonderful administration of the webinar, and good afternoon to everybody.
Thank you, everyone, and have a great afternoon. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you.